In the world of Naruto, we've been introduced to several powerful groups, from the Akatsuki to the 5 Kage to the 9 Jinchuriki, but one group stands out in a way that sometimes I feel they're a bit underappreciated, which is the trio of the Legendary Sannin. Now, any Naruto fan knows exactly who the Legendary Sannin are, and they know that they're referred to as being the strongest team of their generation, but as the years have gone by since Naruto's manga ended in 2014, and we've gotten deeper into the Boruto era, I do find myself seeing more and more people downplay the collective threat of the Legendary Sannin. However, in today's edition of Strongest in Naruto, I want to discuss the collective threat of the Legendary Sannin. The format for this video is going to be the same as my other Strongest in Naruto videos, where I covered the car inner members, the entire Uchiha clan, and the Otsutsuki clan. We're going to break down the threat level of the Legendary Sannin, including some of the lore that you might not be aware of. Also, we can create our custom built shinobi who's going to be strong enough to take on the Legendary Sannin in a 3 versus 1 battle. So, as we all know, the Legendary Sannin were acknowledged by Hanzo for their strength during the Second Great Ninja War and called the strongest team of the generation. The title of Sannin is enough to strike fear into the hearts of many in the ninja world, and even those who aren't necessarily afraid of the Legendary Sannin have enough respect for the Legendary 3 to know that whatever battle that they're in, it won't be an easy one, which makes a lot of sense since their sensei is Hiruzen Sarutobi, the man who is Hokage, mastered every jutsu in Konoha that wasn't a Kekkei Genkai. Hiruzen trained up 3 of the strongest ninja to have ever lived: Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru. Jiraiya the Toad Sage was known equally for his pervy nature as he was for his ferociousness in battle. Jiraiya's name rang bells in these Konoha streets. Tsunade, the granddaughter of the first Hokage, and for many years was considered to be the best medical ninja in the world until her own students surpassed her towards the end of her run as Hokage. Orochimaru, the man who was considered to be the prodigy of his generation, which included the leader of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku Uchiha, Might Dai, the master of the 8 inner gates, the 4th Raikage A, Hiyashi Hyuga, and Rasa, the 4th Kazekage. For Orochimaru to be considered the prodigy of his generation, that says a lot because he did not have a weak generation. But let's dive even deeper beneath the surface to look at what you're going to be facing when you try to face all the Legendary Sannin at once. Well, you're going to be fighting 2 people who have mastered 4 changes in chakra nature. Jiraiya has fire release, wind release, earth release, and water release. Tsunade, according to Naruto Databook 4, has lightning release, earth release, water release, and fire release. Then you have Orochimaru, who is one of the few shinobi in history to have mastered all 5 changes in chakra nature, which is very impressive when you realize that Orochimaru doesn't have a Sharingan and copy ninjutsu. However, Orochimaru becomes even more dangerous when you take into consideration Boruto era Orochimaru, who absorbed chakra from Sage Mode Kabuto during the war and has taken possession of Zetsu's body when he used the living corpse jutsu when they reanimated the dead Hokage, and by absorbing Kabuto's chakra, he gained multiple Kekkei Genkai. On top of that, you have Tsunade, who's in possession of the Byakugo seal, which is considered to be a jutsu of the highest degree of difficulty for chakra control, to the point where it's called the pinnacle of chakra control, which comes with numerous benefits. It gives access to all the chakra stored inside the seal. Any jutsu that is performed uses the absolute bare minimum required for the jutsu when the seal is active, and due to the sudden flow of chakra, the user can amp up their physical stats however they choose, which for Tsunade, all that extra chakra mostly goes towards amping up her strength, and when it's active and the 100 healings jutsu is being applied, the regen ability is insane to deal with. Then you have Jiraiya, who can not only summon toads, but he also has Sage Mode that amps up his power by a considerable amount as well. The Sannin as a collective are not a joke, something that the official supplemental guides for Naruto point out by making it clear that this trio of the Legendary Sannin had power on par to challenge the 5 Kage, which shouldn't be that much of a stretch to believe when you just sit down and think about it. Hiruzen was stated to, even in his old age, still be the strongest of the 5 Kage, which at the time included the 4th Raikage A and Yagura, a perfect Jinchuriki, and Orochimaru managed to kill 2 Kage in that era. Tsunade was confirmed by Madara to be physically stronger than the 4th Raikage, so it's not crazy to say that Orochimaru, with backup from the other 2 Sannin, wouldn't be enough to stalemate the 5 Kage. However, in order to fully understand why this is where we're going to have to look at each Sannin individually. Starting things off with Jiraiya, the legendary Toad Sage himself. Jiraiya possesses an enormous chakra reserve, evidenced by the fact that he's even able to undergo Sage Mode training, which the Naruto manga made it clear just to attempt the training you have to have a large chakra reserve. Whether or not you take Itachi's statement that Itachi and Kisame would only be able to stalemate Jiraiya, I'll leave that up to you if you think whether or not Itachi was working over Kisame, but what we do know is that Jiraiya was offered the title Hokage on multiple occasions, which speaks to the name recognition of his power. Jiraiya was capable enough as a shinobi that even someone as overpowered as Nagato admitted that if Jiraiya had possessed any knowledge about the six paths of pain and the basic Rinnegan jutsu that the six paths have, they would have fallen in battle if they fought. Jiraiya's battle IQ is dangerously underrated at times by fans, likely due to his goofy persona at times that you've seen in the manga, but given Naruto is a series that has the message of a ninja must learn to see past deception, it's only fitting that someone like Jiraiya actually possessed a very sharp battle sense. All it took was one look at Itachi's Amaterasu for him to realize that the only way to deal with the flames was to seal them away. During his battle with the six paths of pain, despite at times being forced to take a defensive and run for his life and dealing with the shock factor of fighting his former student, Jiraiya was breaking down and processing the information that he was getting in real time and came out of that fight having killed several of the pains in that fight despite not having any prior intel about them before that fight and despite being outnumbered and overpowered. Against Urashiki, we saw his battle IQ on display because he clocked Urashiki's Rinnegan powers being used enough that he was able to figure out what Urashiki was doing by going back and forth in time so many times in their fight that he came up with a strategy to have Urashiki inhale toxins from the toad summoning so that the enemy he was fighting would be brought down several pegs, because as we've been told several times in the series, it doesn't matter how strong your exterior is. The interior, like the organs and etc., they're still vulnerable to exploit, which is why someone like Sasori who uses poisons, that's why they're so deadly, because they can target your insides. Now, Jiraiya's raw power is not as flashy as somebody like Tsunade or Sakura with the latter who uses chakra enhanced strength, and Tsunade who already possesses raw strength that's crazy. He's still a very formidable fighter, being shown able to send Naruto flying across the forest with one hit in part 1 of the series. Even before he goes into Sage mode, we've seen the man with enough physical strength to pick up and chuck entire boulders, which depending on how big you think that the boulder is, if it was 3 foot, then it weighed 1,200 pounds. If it was 2 foot, then it weighed 450 pounds, which either of those is going to be repressive regardless. When he does enter into Sage mode, which is assuming the other two Sannin by time for him to enter into Sage mode, Jiraiya gets an insane power up in all categories from speed to strength to stamina. Just a difference in size between his normal Rasengan and his Sage Art Ultra Giant Rasengan is telling about the power increase. Then, while in Sage mode, he has Manpa Toad on his shoulders, constantly replenishing nature energy for him, and another benefit to them being on his body is that they can also fight alongside him. This means jutsu like the demonic illusion frog song jutsu can be used on the enemy, which uses sound to place the user under genjutsu. When this happens, anyone, regardless as to how strong they are, they're gonna fall under the genjutsu and be paralyzed from their body to their mind, which allows time for Jiraiya to stab his targets with the swords. But the trade-off is that once this genjutsu is used, the toads can't use it again until after they've rested. The other benefit that Jiraiya has to having these toads is that he can perform the Sage Art Bath of the Boiling Oil Jutsu, which is one of Jiraiya's nastier combo attacks. This jutsu is used when Jiraiya shoots off a huge wad of Sage Toad Oil at his enemy, while Fukasaku shoots off Wind Release and Shima shoots off Fire Release. The three attacks then begin to merge and the oil begins to burn at a temperature well over 1,000 degrees due to the Wind Release amping up the Fire Release. Jiraiya can also perform the Pro Barrier Jutsu, which allows him to make a circular barrier around the battlefield that has him or his allies at the center of the jutsu, and the barrier can expand as he wills it to, and it alerts Jiraiya to all movement inside the barrier, and the barrier is always going to follow against Jiraiya, which means that when you're fighting Jiraiya and the Sannin and he's using this jutsu, there's no place that you can hide. Jiraiya can find your location. Orochimaru can use the striking shadow snakes or the body modification in order to drag you out of your hiding spot. The Earth Release Dark Swamp Jutsu is able to trap whoever he's fighting in a mud pit that's strong enough to hold down large summoning animals, and it's difficult to escape from, which in a battle with 3 people this strong, all it takes is one opening to get one shot by someone like Tsunade. When when fighting Jiraiya, you also have to be on the lookout for his hair, because Jiraiya can use the Nido Jizo's jutsu in order to shoot off projectiles of his hair that are sharp enough to destroy boulders, and it can be wrapped around most of his body for defensive purposes, which means you're going to think twice before hitting him. He can also use the lion's mane jutsu, which can be used to extend his hair out while his chakra hardens to levels that are tougher than steel wire, and this can be used to bind the enemy, which means that you're not only on the lookout for close range attacks like the Rasengan, but you're also on the lookout for mid-range jutsu like this as well. Then we have the fifth Hokage, Tsunade herself, and probably the most misunderstood of the legendary Sannin. This is the woman who Madara Uchiha himself acknowledged was stronger than the fourth Raikage. There's a reason why Tsunade's strength and title of the strongest Konoichi wasn't challenged until Sakura in the fourth Great Ninja War. While a lot of people like to point to her fight with Kabuto, who Orochimaru scaled to part 1 in Kakashi, it's worth noting a few things that people tend to leave out. So Kabuto needed to take a food pill midway through their fight in order to restore his chakra and restore his stamina. Tsunade in that fight up to that point, number 1, had not used any of the chakra in her seal, and number 2, she was operating on the assumption that she was going to have to fight Orochimaru after she fought Kabuto. Even though Orochimaru didn't have his arms, he was still a dangerous shinobi. I don't think people realize how much of a cheat code that was for Kabuto, since the food pills give the power to a shinobi that can last for 3 days and 3 nights while the stimulants are inside of it. Another thing of note is that people really downplay Tsunade's lineage from one of the things I've been seeing. Tsunade being the grandchild of Hashirama Senju and Mito Uzumaki is really huge, because that means she's the descendant of 2 clans with the strongest physical energy in the Senju clan and the strongest life force in the Uzumaki clan. Her stamina is underrated. We actually have a few huge feats for this. So it's evident by the fact that she was constantly able to endure the ethereal transmission jutsu, that it was stated that this jutsu would shred the body to pieces, and that only the third Raikage had the durability to withstand it until Tsunade and the fourth Raikage endured this jutsu. Not only did Tsunade endure the effects of this jutsu, but she also went on to heal the other Kages more than once during the battle with Madara, and she herself fought Madara alongside the other Kages for half a day, and after the battle ended, despite being split in half by a tree, Tsunade saw enough chakra to summon Katsuyu and had Katsuyu heal the other Kages who were on the verge of death. Her raw power combined with her chakra enhanced punches were enough. She was able to crack the Susanoo ribcage of Madara, something that the fourth Raikage wasn't able to match in force until he was assisted by Onoiki. Tsunade can also transform her chakra into electricity and shoot through the body when she hits you, and once something like this happens, she disrupts the electrical impulses inside your body to a point where the brain cannot communicate effectively. So when you move your pinky, you're actually moving your eyelids. When you move your left toe, you're actually moving your mouth. While Kabuto was able to overcome this by doing a quick analysis of his body, Tsunade's reaction to this was very telling. Nobody hit with this jutsu bounces back as quick as Kabuto did. This is an exception to the rule. The exception does not make the standard. And I think one thing that is often overlooked about this moment is when people use the Kabuto versus Tsunade as a reference point, they overlook the fact that in the manga chapter 164, Tsunade literally says that Kabuto's jutsu instincts and his sharp mind actually surpasses what Tsunade was in her prime, which says a lot, because Tsunade is the medical prodigy up to this point, which that is the true reason why Kabuto was able to figure out the patterns of his impulses so quickly in such a short period of time. He's literally the only person at this point in the series that could actually do that quickly, at least. You could argue Orochimaru, but we'll get to that once we get to Orochimaru. So Tsunade becomes an even greater threat when you realize that her understanding of poison surpasses even that of Chiyo. While she herself doesn't use poison in battle, that doesn't mean that she herself can't use poison if she chooses to do so. And we know for a fact that there are formulas that she's made, whether it be the creation that she used on Jiraiya, that not only put Jiraiya to sleep, but it severely nerfed his chakra levels and his ability to mold chakra while it was in his system, to the point where he couldn't fight at full power. And she was also Shizune's teacher, and Shizune we know is capable of using poisons because she used them in her battle with Kabuto, and she even taught Sakura how to use poison kunai that Sakura tried to use on Sasuke during the 5 Kage summit. Another testament to Tsunade's chakra reserves being larger than a lot of fans realize is that Tsunade had enough chakra to not only heal several thousand ninja from dying relying upon reaching the battlefield during the war and during the Pain arc. When Pain blew up the village, she was not only able to use Katsuyu, who is linked to her chakra levels, to offer up some aid to those who are being healed, but at the same time, when a pissed off Pain blew up the village with the Shinra Tensei, Tsunade was able to funnel enough of her chakra through Katsuyu to protect every living person inside the village while taking a brunt of the damage herself, and still had the balls enough afterwards to challenge Pain to a fight. Granted, she was still gonna lose anyway, but the fact that she was still left standing after the fact, after pulling something like that off against a pissed off Rinnegan user's Shinra Tensei that was large enough in scale and powerful enough that Naruto Parent and Child Days novel says that it cracked the village's foundation. That is telling. That's why you see Tsunade having to go into a coma after the fact, because Tsunade had to use a lot of chakra to keep a lot of people alive. When fighting, Tsunade can also utilize the chakra scalpel jutsu, which can be used to make deep cuts inside the body of a target without actually opening up a wound. While doing so, there's a reason why you don't see medical ninjas running around in large numbers using this jutsu in battle, because the precision required to use this jutsu in combat is absolutely insane. It's different than cutting on somebody on a surgery table. There's a reason why there's only been a small number of medical ninjas being shown able to use this for offensive purposes, and you know what they all have in common? They're prodigies. This means Tsunade slicing up your tendons and your muscles and even some of your organs and your vital points, that's not off the table right here. Now, another thing of note right here is that Tsunade's raw power does not just rely on her chakra enhanced punches like I see a lot of people claiming. Tsunade's own raw power without chakra enhanced anything cracked the ground with the finger, and she's shown crushing stones with only her body's muscle. Tsunade also has access to genjutsu, shown when she used it in Naruto's anime episode 146 to stop the legendary idiot brothers, who are now some of my new favorite characters. When she stopped them in her tracks, and she can place more than one person under genjutsu at once, and given she doesn't appear to need any hand seals or jutsu, yikes, you're gonna run into a problem with this. Now, when she uses the 100 healings jutsu in conjunction with releasing her Byakugo seal, Tsunade gets a huge buff in power, and she's able to instantaneously heal any injuries that she suffered, including being stabbed through the gut by a Susanoo sword, which means that the only way to literally kill her might be to blow off her head. The continuous healing factor is linked directly to the chakra of the user, but it's also worth noting that Madara, someone who isn't easily impressed by much of anything, took one look at this and said, yeah, I like that jutsu right there. That's kind of cool. Now, if that isn't crazy enough, consider the fact that she has access to all these jutsu. Then remember that she can also perform the multi-shadow clone jutsu, which we saw in Naruto episode 97, where Tsunade made a whopping 17 shadow clones to chase after Naruto, which means that a bare minimum, you have 17 shadow clones that can use the chakra scalpel jutsu, and they only need one good hit on a vital spot in order to kill you. Then we have the mad scientist Orochimaru, who is an absolute monster by the time we reach the Boruto era, but that's not to say he was a pushover before Boruto. Being in the Akatsuki, he was already a threat just based off the fact that each member of the Akatsuki was considered in the manga to be an S-rank Kage level threat, and Orochimaru was far from the weakest member of the Akatsuki. His strength more than proved itself as being worthy enough of being given an Akatsuki ring, in the sense he was able to hold his own and eventually kill Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was considered at the time to be the strongest of the living 5 Kage. And if you say that Hiruzen technically killed himself, Orochimaru was still holding his own against him and matching his strikes before Hiruzen was having his attention split by weaker Edo Tensei versions of Hashirama and Tobirama. Orochimaru was strong enough that once word got out that Orochimaru had been credited with killing the 3rd Hokage and the 4th Kazekage, the manga and the 2nd fan book make it clear that the 4th Raikage not only started training again, seeking out more power, but he was specifically seeking out ninjutsu and power to a point where he got called out on it during the 5 Kage summit by Inoki, and the Raikage stated that there was nothing in their intel to make it clear whether or not Orochimaru was working with the Akatsuki when he killed the 2 Kage. Orochimaru did enough to spook the Raikage, which is telling, given that the Raikage himself was being compared to 8 Tails levels of power by Karin. Just by molding his chakra, we've seen him create shockwaves, and during the battle with Hiruzen, the chakra being molded by the 2 of them was so dense and so thick that it cracked the stone on the rooftop that they were fighting fighting on. With just one hit and a dying body at that, Orochimaru was toying around with Four Tails Naruto and openly boasting that Four Tails Naruto is nowhere near as powerful as Sasuke was during that time period. His body modification jutsu allows him to stretch out his limbs to grab his enemy from afar and slam them onto the ground, throw them across the battlefield, and even extend his neck to bite them. When Orochimaru absorbed the power and the knowledge that Kabuto had attained after Sasuke killed Orochimaru, he also got another boost in power. This included all the Kekkei Genkai of the Sound 5. So jutsu like Kimamaru's body modification, Orochimaru can perform it. By the time we reach Boruto era Orochimaru, his regen ability has gotten so broken he can instantaneously activate it, as shown in the battle against Victor in Boruto episode 175. Another thing that makes Orochimaru so deadly is that this man has spent years learning all the jutsu he can, even the ones that he can't actually use, simply because he has a thirst for knowledge. And this also includes sealing jutsu, which we've seen he's skilled enough with sealing jutsu. He can seal off somebody's chakra, he can disrupt somebody's chakra like he did to Naruto in the Chunin exams. In the Chunin exams, we also saw him hiding in trees during this battle with Anko, which means during the chaos of this battle, Orochimaru theoretically could be anywhere. Then you have the summoning of the triple Rashomon gates, which we saw how much force those bad boys can take during the battle with Four Tails Naruto. He's also very skilled with the sword, being able to match the melee strikes of a weapons master in the third Hokage, and he's even able to telepathically control the weapon itself, which means even after you disarmed him, you still have to keep the sword in mind. Then you have the issue that Orochimaru can literally produce the sword out of his mouth faster than old heads in New York back in the day could spit out a razor blade from the mouth and slice up your face. Then you run into the issue of Orochimaru, on top of being proficient in all 5 changes in chakra nature, the man can also transform himself into an 8-headed hydra that is massive in size and larger than some summoning animals. Now, speaking of snakes, Orochimaru can also summon 10,000 snakes using the 10,000 snake wave jutsu, where he lays down on the ground, opens up his mouth, and shoots out 10,000 poisonous snakes that can bite the enemy, or they can shoot out swords from their mouth. And Orochimaru can also use them as a defensive layer. And on top of that, Orochimaru can also shed his skin during the battle to avoid attacks, which is another headache you have to deal with the collective battle against the Legendary Sannin. Then you have another jutsu that Orochimaru created in the Boruto era. Orochimaru's barrier jutsu that he uses in Boruto episode 175 can not only trap someone inside of it, but anyone who touches the barrier will be incinerated upon contact. Then you also have this huge elephant in the room. Orochimaru's Edo Tensei can be summoned if he's been able to prepare Edo Tensei before the battle, which, knowing Orochimaru, he's probably got Edo Tensei. So on top of that, you have to deal with the fact that each of the Legendary Sannin have summoning jutsu, and fighting them as a collective just became that much harder. Katsuyu can not only take the attacks herself and split up in order to heal the other 2 Legendary Sannin, as long as Tsunade has chakra, which we've already established she has quite a bit of chakra. But on top of having to worry about Tsunade's summoning, restoring the other Sannin's strength, you also have to look out for the fact that Katsuyu can also spit out potent enough acid that she can split the ground. Then you have Orochimaru, who can summon Manda, who when he was alive, he was the strongest of the snake summoners, and Manda was also strong enough that he could take the full brunt of Data C0, briefly survive it after to talk a little bit of trash to Sasuke before he died. Then you have Jiraiya, who can not only summon multiple toads at the same time in a battle, but you also have to throw out that if he uses an enormous amount of chakra, he can summon Gamabunta. Gamabunta being strong enough, he could hold down the full version of the Nine Tails for a short period of time, and even swap hands with the One Tails in part 1 of Naruto, between his own ability to use water release and shoot off toad oil bombs that are timed with Jiraiya's flame bullet jutsu. And then on top of that, you're going to have to deal with the taijutsu and the swordplay in that fight. In the Boruto era, it's so easy to overlook some of the powerhouses that we have in Naruto, but one thing's for certain, the Legendary Sannin is a collective, being rivals to the collective 5 Kage in part 1. That wasn't by mistake. And when we add in Boruto era Orochimaru, this threat level rises even further. They are without a shadow of a doubt one of the strongest collectives we have in the Naruto franchise. So if this video can hit 2,000 likes, I'll make a video on the collective power of the Akatsuki, as long as we hit 2,000 likes before the end of the month. If you enjoyed this video, consider watching some of my other videos from the Strongest in Naruto playlist.